Will your children grow up Jewish? It all depends on their education. For more information about an Israeli scholarship, scan the QR code here. Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, hundreds of rockets fired towards Israel as a new IDF operation in Gaza targeting the Iranian proxy terror group Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Meanwhile, ILTV meeting with a longtime resident of the Gaza periphery area for a first-hand look at life in Israel under nearly constant threat. And later, proof that Islamic Jihad is killing Palestinian children and civilians in the Gaza Strip. This has some 25% of the terror group's rockets immediately misfiring. Conflict again erupting between Israeli forces and Palestinian terror groups in Gaza over the weekend. This as Israel launching a concerted mission to neutralize the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Islamic Jihad responding by firing hundreds of rockets. Israelis from Sderot to Tel Aviv and to Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria running to bomb shelters over the weekend as Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists fire over 580 rockets toward civilian cities as of Sunday morning. And this following the launching of Israel's Operation Breaking Dawn. Beginning on Friday, Breaking Dawn initiated by the IDF's killing of Taysir Jabari, northern Gaza commander of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terror group. Jabari was said to be planning an imminent attack on Israel in retaliation for the arrest of the terror group's West Bank leader earlier last week. But beyond a series of preemptive missions, Breaking Dawn is now revealed to be a much more comprehensive strike against the core of the Islamic Jihad itself, with Israel killing and capturing several more high-ranking members across the region over the weekend, including in an airstrike killing the southern Gaza commander Khaled Mansour and 2 other top members. In fact, the Gaza death toll now rising to 29, with at least 11 confirmed as terror group militants and 9 confirmed as killed by Islamic Jihad's own rockets, and Israeli military authorities saying they believe Islamic Jihad's entire top brass has now been killed or arrested.
המטרה שלנו, 1, למנוע כל פיגוע, 2, לפגוע באופן אנוש בארגון הג'יהאד האסלאמי, גם פה, גם באיו"ש ובכל זירה אחרת. הארגון הזה עכשיו תחת מרדף, הארגון הזה עכשיו תחת התקפה, וכאמור יש לנו תוכניות ממינים וסוגים שונים. אנחנו לא נאפשר לשום ארגון, לא פה, לא בצפון, לא באיו"ש, לא בשום מקום, לפגוע בריבונות של מדינת ישראל.
That said, the threat not over yet. Defense Minister Benny Gantz saying the conflict could continue well into the week, and Islamic Jihad on Sunday morning warning that they'll fire on Tel Aviv at 9:30 p.m. again this evening. And now joining with more on Operation Breaking Dawn, former commander of IDF Special Forces and former member of the Kadima Party, Lieutenant Colonel Reserves, Dr. Doron Avital. Lieutenant Colonel, it is a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much. Now, what exactly is Breaking Dawn about? What sets it apart from previous operations like Tzuk Eitan or Pillar of, defensive walls?
I think the main distinction is that we target or are trying to isolate and targeting the Islamic Jihad and separating it from the Hamas. This is a key difference when you compare it to previous operation. In terms of the execution of the operation, until now it's conducted very carefully. We were very exact targeting. We're holding the surprise element in the beginning of the operation. So I think major objectives were achieved, but we should have a look and be very careful to this distinction, the fact that the Hamas is not involved and hopefully will not be involved, and therefore we succeed to isolate this extreme organization that is backed by Iran, and hopefully Hamas will try to behave more responsibly in the future, given the fact that he has citizen that he has to take care of the economical woes and so on. So I think there is some main differences, and in the meantime, the operation is conducted very well.
Well, I think it was also pretty unique that Israel actually initiated this operation with the arrests in the West Bank, and then, of course, with the strikes on Friday in Gaza. Yeah. I mean, that's...
The question of the initiation is twofold. I mean, even there was no... I'm not sure there was a clear idea that giving the arrest, the Islamic Jihad would have, if you want, the nerves to, as if force an ultimatum on Israel and put our southern border at risk. So I think the Jihad overplayed his hand. We were very careful not to act too soon. And once we gathered the intelligence, we acted in a very swift and clear and exact manner. That this is really a tribute to the IDF, to the intelligence, to the Air Force, and of course to the Shabak, who is responsible for a lot of the intelligence gathering.
All right, now I understand in theory why Islamic Jihad is firing rockets between 9 and 9:30 p.m., although of course they've been firing sporadically all weekend and even just a few minutes ago. This coincides, of course, with Israel killing former commander Baha Abu al-Atta a couple of years ago. Why does Islamic Jihad, however, announce when they're going to start firing off rockets? Are they perhaps intentionally trying to minimize Israeli civilian casualties in a sense, or is it maybe just a political move to let other Palestinians know?
I think it's, there's a dimension to warfare now that goes to the psychology of the public and to try to create a fear in your enemy. I mean, it was always part of warfare. It's not new. But this is part of the story. They are trying to show that they are, first of all, true to their plans and declaration, that they can command fear in our civilians. So it's part of this kind of dimension of the new warfare, I would assume, that they call the shots. This is very important, who calls the shot in the Middle East.
All right, now, the IDF and Islamic Jihad are speaking through Egypt about brokering a ceasefire. They're talking about potentially brokering it by 10 p.m. tonight, but at the same time, Islamic Jihad is refusing and, again, threatening to fire off more missiles. Why is it in Islamic Jihad's interest to continue this conflict?
Well, yeah, the question is the end note or the concluding step, the way a conflict ends. From the perspective of Israel, we achieved our objectives. We targeted the senior military players. We are set. We don't need it to continue. We don't want it to escalate. We don't want it to escalate not to the Hamas, not to the West Bank, not inside Israel, and not to the north, which is also very problematic. From the perspective of the jihad, I think they got bitten hardly, and they want to conclude, but they want to conclude on a note that wouldn't make them, I would say, losers. But I'm not sure they can do it, and they have to weigh their steps, and I think ceasefire at the end of this conflict negotiated by the Egyptians, this is the way it should go, also for them. But let's hope.
So another question is there really going to be much of an Islamic Jihad at the end of this conflict to negotiate with? The IDF is saying that they've essentially taken out the entire top brass. Is that true? And if it is this the end of Islamic Jihad as we know it, or are they capable of coming back?
History tells us that when you kill leaders, leaders come to replace them, but for sure weakening this organization and making Hamas the sole sovereign of Gaza is, interestingly enough, an objective, a strategic objective of Israel, because if Hamas is the sole sovereign and there's no key extreme player that plays with Iranian backing, then we can claim from Hamas to behave even as an enemy state. In many respects, the objective of Israel is not right now to come to peace with Hamas, but to have Gaza an enemy state in a state of a long ceasefire. And we were living like this for years with other countries.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Doron Avital, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So with hundreds of rockets raining down overhead, we ask, what's it like living near the Gaza Strip, especially since 2005, when Israel unilaterally withdrew from the enclave and Hamas took power? With us to discuss is resident of the Gaza envelope in Israel, Adel Reimer. Adel, it's great to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with how your weekend's been. Tell us of the last few days. I understand that there were rocket sirens really just moments ago in over your kibbutz as well.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, so it's been a very strange round, and I've seen all of them since they started in 2008. We started with 3 days of what they called a silent escalation, and people were confused and didn't we know how to handle rockets.
Will your children grow up Jewish? It all depends on their education. For more information about an Israeli scholarship, scan the QR code here.